I was going to say good morning, but I guess it's afternoon. Good afternoon, John.
Afternoon to you, Mark.
Seems to flow together when you're doing international. It's good morning, good evening, good afternoon, the whole gambit. So, hey, welcome to our Leaders Who Care conversations series. One of the ones I've been looking forward to, for quite a while, since my partner Jim got us together, and only because I've been involved in it in one way or another. um, throughout my life and in sports and business and a lot of things. So, um, great way to start would be if you could briefly introduce yourself, a little bit about you, family, things like that. Maybe even something no one else knows in the whole world that you want to take the time now to put out there. I'll leave that up to you, and then we'll chat. How's that?
That sounds great. No one else knows in the whole world. Now, that is a very tall order. I have to go deep into the archives for that one, Mark. My name is John Stahl-Wert, and I'm founder of a company called Center for Serving Leadership. 62 years old, married for 40 years to my sweetheart, Malonica. We have a
Right.
couple of grown daughters and a magnificently handsome grandson. Um,
Wonder where that comes from.
but not from me. And I live in the city of Pittsburgh, where I have now spent 33 years of my life, born and raised in the Amish Mennonite community of Eastern Pennsylvania. Those are my people. And split my adult life, Mark, between the social sector and the private sector, primarily in the entrepreneurial space, paying attention to the process whereby somebody has an idea or a passion or a knack and wants to bring it out into the world in a way that's useful to people. And somewhere along the line, I realized that the human being who wants to do something useful in the world stumbles over themselves at some point when they begin to have people around them that they need to help them. And that sort of backed me at first reluctantly and then ultimately willingly into paying attention to leadership and how it works, that we go about the task of gathering a group of people to marshal their efforts together to do something cool. So Mark, thanks for inviting me to join you. It's a real pleasure.
No, it's all my pleasure, and it's interesting you talk about Amish Mennonite. One of my first leadership challenges was right after Deloitte. I was in a large real estate developer, largest in Canada at the time, private, and I saw the marketing guys were always asking me to go with them to explain the financial stuff, and they were making way more
Yeah.
money than me. And so I went to the CEO, said I could do this. So his first place he sent me, this young Canadian Jewish, you know, kind of sheltered guy, if you will, not totally, was out to the Mennonite community. And
In Ontario or
it's
in
no, this was actually
Winnipeg or
Winnipeg, Manitoba, exactly.
yeah, yeah.
And it was an amazing experience. People coming in buggies and cars and different things. And one of the biggest things I learned was, which was not hard for me to say, I didn't know everything. And how kind they were in educating me on some stuff and saying, well, you can go back and you can bring us back the answers and everything. And just being co-creative and
Mm.
looking to work together and collaborative. It's an amazing experience for me, that I got more out of it than them. And there was a deal made on top of it. So
That's good. Well, I'm immensely grateful for my upbringing, for my roots, for my family. And one of the things that it's done, and I can't adequately express the joy it brings me, is it's allowed me to this day to spend a lot of time with Amish business owners and watch the remarkable giftedness, brilliance, entrepreneurialism, innovation, creativity of these leaders. It's lovely.
there are leaders who care everywhere,
There
right?
are, there are.
And we
Yeah.
should always remember that, and don't misjudge, because a lot of people can bring some great stuff to the table. So you are clearly recognized as a pretty successful servant entrepreneur. You're an
Mm.
author. You wrote a few books here and there, right? And
Sure.
and certainly a leadership mentor. So before we delve even deeper, why do you do what you do?
Well, yeah, I have to answer this question sort of sideways, Mark. Um, um, what I do right now is different than what I planned to do. I suppose that's a pretty broad human experience. What did John Lennon write in one of his songs? Life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans. And I thought I would stay in the entrepreneurship space. I studied microenterprise in the US in cities as well as in Africa and Asia. I love the process of seeing how the conception of an idea takes on flesh and moves from an idea someone has into reality. You know, I grew up son of a carpenter, and quite similar. I loved the day we framed, you know, the main part of the house. We would be down in the ground for days in the foundation, and then one day we would show up and frame. And in the morning we're standing on the ground, and in the evening we're standing on the peak of the house, 3 stories up there on something that had not existed before. And I love that process. But as I shared with you, I came to realize that that process requires orchestration of people and energy and motivation, and that backed me into this space. Um, you know, for me, it's an awe for the gift of life, for the gift of creativity. Um, Nobody puts me over the moon more than leaders I get to be friends with who risk and dare great things, pay quite a price for it, always. I don't know the exception. I laugh, you know, we could laugh or cry, but cause new ways of doing things, or even new ways of being to, you know, to emerge in the landscape. And it makes me super happy. It fills me up, Mark. So maybe the simplest answer is I have a sense of wonder, you know, about life and about creativity, and I have joy when I see it, and I love helping. I really love helping.
Well, it's interesting. You know, they say there's been lots of studies about um, what's important to people, and obviously after food and air, the
Mm.
thing that the thing that fills people's hearts and souls is belonging more than
Yes,
anything.
yes,
So it kind of sounds like that you found where you belong, basically.
yeah, yeah. I did, and you know, uh, I'm grateful for that. I don't see that I pulled that off. I see it as a gift. You know, you talk about food, air, and belonging. I started to recognize in my early work with leaders. You know, I was 18 years with an organization called Leadership Foundations. Spent 12 of those years as CEO of Pittsburgh Leadership Foundation, which was the mother institution of the Global Leadership Foundation movement. And I watched the pain, or you could say the, you know, the primary needs of leaders, and leaders who don't know who they are, you know, feel really lost. Leaders who don't know how uh, to to create the influence they intend. You know, they try things and they get different outcomes than the ones they want. Leaders who don't have confidence that they're going to leave a legacy that's worth it at the end of the day. I could tell you stories. And leaders who are lonely and wonder what happened to my friends, and where can I belong. And so I think you said it really well, Mark. It's you know, belonging is really foundational.
Yeah, and it's brilliant how you categorize them, for lack of a better word, because we work obviously with a lot of leaders too who want to care. They do care, but like one executive told me recently, he said, you know, it's ridiculous with the quarterly reporting. I don't have any time. But by the time I finish this quarterly reporting, I'm working on the next quarterly reporting versus bigger deal. And he wasn't somebody that made excuses for not having the time to care, but time was a factor. And
Yeah.
then in the same conversation with another executive, he said, this is the easiest it's ever been for me to be a leader because of I'm allowed to be vulnerable and not know everything also.
It's wonderful. It's wonderful. I spend a lot of time, or I should say, pre-COVID, I spent a lot of time in Singapore. We have a lot of work there and an office there, and and the reason I was so interested in taking the serving leader work that we do to Singapore is I think that it's arguable that they have accountably and I think wonderfully driven the results you can get from excellent strategy execution to the utmost. I don't think there's a Singaporean who doesn't know what their key performance indicators are for the week. And I think of this as, your comment about your friend reminded me of this. I think of it as the left hand of management. We got to get work done. The quarterly reports, the metrics, the done buys that we have to turn in by Friday, the ship buys, we've got these things we have to get done, and all our time gets sucked up in our delivery requirements. And Singapore does that truly. I think they do it more accountably, vigorously, honorably than any place on earth, but they've begun to realize it's not enough.
Right.
And so then there's the other hand. So we got to get our work done, but we got to grow our people. We have to wake our people up. They need to show up, wake up, grow up, because we need their minds and their hearts and their passion. And we don't get any of that if we don't care. And so we're in a kind of a revolutionary moment, Mark, where increasingly leaders are realizing caring for my people is not it's not an elective when I have time. It's actually a primary driver of success. I can't not care. And I don't mean caring in a sort of a perfunctory way, like, okay, I got my caring in for today, check, because people smell that, right? In a New York Minute, it's like they know you went to a seminar on caring, and it doesn't paste on, right? I mean, it pastes on, but it falls off again. But in a genuine sense, we fall behind in business when we don't care, because when we don't care, our people do what's necessary for us, but they fall way short of the bigness of the contribution they could make if we cared.
No doubt. I use a lot of sports analogies because I learned a lot about leadership in sports and
Right.
teamwork and all the usual stuff. And the coach that yells at the referee about a certain player, even though he's not going to win that argument, is doing it for the player.
Yeah.
And then the player says, man, he does believe in me and he does
Yeah.
stand up for
Yeah.
me. He'll do anything for that coach.
Right. That's perfect. Perfect, Mark.
It's fantastic. And so I love the way you frame it. And I've worked with being an executive search practice and being executive director of a leadership development organization. Before that, a nonprofit. I met a lot of great leaders. I met a lot of what I call sucky leaders too. And,
right.
But the word care kept coming up over year after year after year, was saying, how come we can't get good people? How come we can't, have them stay? What's going on? They're not developing. And I think, I love your opinion on this. Number one, it's taken decades for people to get what you just said, that caring. I love what you said. It's not like you can tell when the person just came back from a webinar or something. It's got to be authentic and real. Mm-hmm. And it even reminds me of my mom always used to say, if you tell everybody the truth, you don't have to worry about what you told everybody. It's a lot easier.
Right.
And it is easier to just care, because especially when things go wrong and you've communicated with people and care about them, and you tell them, like in an era like COVID, we're having problems in the business now. Guess what? They're coming up, the employees, and saying, well, let's figure out how to make this work.
Right.
You cared and you told us stuff. So I'm interested because you've got a really interesting background with unique history and theology, combination, and urban centers and international Singapore. Do you find distinct differences? Like you pointed out, the task is being done in Singapore, but they come here a lot of times to get that passion and purpose stuff, and we could be better at the task stuff. We need to put it together. Do you find a lot of differences in leaders from different places, cultures around the world?
Yeah, I think that there's no doubt that the mental model, the thinking frameworks that leaders bring to their their assignment, those things vary from place to place on earth based on upbringing, based on maybe religion, based on culture. But what's interesting is that whatever the starting line is, leaders eventually realize they have to pay attention to the people space, to the human side. And their mark, I find people are people. And so when a leader it has the capacity of ego and character to be improved by life, and many leaders don't. They're too brittle, too insecure, maybe too damaged to get feedback, to take feedback. If something difficult happens, they want someone else to hurt instead of bearing the pain themselves and learning the lesson. When a leader has the capacity of character to really go to school on their leadership journey, search their soul, begin to listen to their people, they discover more and more of the same lessons. And what got me started in this space, I was working in leadership foundations in cities around the world and spending time with owners, executives, presidents, CEOs, what have you, in many, many parts of the world. And every time I was in an extraordinary organization where people loved to come to work and did great work and were loyal to the company and did the right thing when the boss's back was turned and pleased customers and just knocked it out of the park. Every time I was in a place like that, the leaders were behaving the same way. Mm-hmm. And that's in fact what got all this started, as I began to observe those common practices and began to write a little bit about that. And that stuff ended up getting into the hands of a guy named Bob Buford and another man named Peter Drucker. And then there was a challenge put in front of me to get this written down. And so, for example, I could introduce you to a CEO in Guangzhou. I'll name him, Mr. Tichin Wang, T.S. Wang. He founded the most successful original equipment manufacturer in the toy space on Earth in 1977. Mr. Wang didn't know what he was doing when he started. He made every mistake in the book. Or I could take you to Amish, Ohio, and introduce you to Mr. Bill Mullett, who started a window and door manufacturing company in 1977, same year. And if you watch those guys today, you'd say they're the same guy. Mr. Mullett didn't know what he was doing, but the lessons of life and the nature of the human, the people space of work guided them, taught them, disciplined them into the same practices. And so, yeah, I do find leaders have different starting frameworks. When they start out, it's culturally based, it's religiously based, it's geographically based, but people are people, Mark. They want respect, they want love, they want their data count, they want security, they want their ideas to be heard. They want to belong, back to your earlier point.
What a weird thing to want. How terrible to want that stuff, right? I mean,
you want it, right, Mark?
Yeah, I mean,
me too.
It applies to business, it applies to life, it applies to crazy wars, it applies to so many things. Everybody wants the same thing.
And here's the thing. The successful companies, Jim Collins proved this in Good to Great. This debate is over now. The successful companies are successful because they have a greater quantity proportionate to their whole workforce of human beings who have decided to bring their A game.
Yeah.
And why would they? Well, they would if they get to work for a boss or a company, that respects them, listens to them, gives them work worth doing. We think that the primary task of leadership is to know what needs to be done and then get people to do it. By the way, that's a great starting line. Mm-hmm. To know what needs to be done and hire people and make sure there's capital there and give job descriptions and how's that project coming? Are you going to get that done on Friday? I mean, that's very important. I don't joke about that. That matters.
Sure.
But what really sets a company apart from its peers and lets it accelerate past them is having a lot of human beings who come to the conclusion that they work for a great place that's worthy of all the rest of them, and so they bring their imagination and they bring their heart and they bring their feelings and they bring their honor. That's what makes great companies great. Jim Collins proved this. And what we do in serving leadership is we teach managers how to produce that. So yeah, we all want this, and guess what? It makes a difference in business productivity. Shocker.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I once interviewed an NHL executive, and asked him about stuff like that, and he said, every year we want to win the championship. We know we're not going to win it every year, but that's the goal. But our mandate every year is to have a winning season, and the only way we have a winning season if everybody from the players to the usher to the secretary in the office all are in on the same purpose and they all feel that they're cared for and they all
Amen.
feel like they're part of the team. And
Absolutely.
and it was winning all the time. So yeah, it seems, there's another expression: if common sense was common practice, things would be wonderful. It's not rocket science, and even the expression
Yep.
work-life balance was always of question to me, because I never understood why you stop work to then have life and then stop life to have work again.
I agree with you. A lot of the leaders I have served over the years, and I've had the privilege of working with. I make the claim, some of the finest leaders on earth, and it's a blessing. And often I have heard a really fine leader say to me, "Hey, Stalwart, what you're helping me with, I think I already knew." And because I'm a human being too, there's no judgment in my heart with what I say next. But I say, I know you know it, but you're not doing it. And I, I don't think I have done very much, Mark, to close the knowledge ignorance gap, because most of the leaders I serve know as much or more than me. My passion and my skill, my gifting, I believe, is narrowing the knowing doing gap. A lot of leaders do the knuckleheaded stuff they do. I've done tons of it because no one's shown them how to do better.
Yeah, I
And
think you're 100% right. When we talk about leaders who care, we get a lot of them say, I do care, but how am I going to do it?
right,
So I think
right.
you're right. And then you got to strategize how to do it. And then they realize, holy cow, this is actually good for business.
It's good
And
for business.
holy cow, we can get,
I,
that's the only way you get great people to join you too.
I walked into a very celebrated Catholic hospital some years ago. The serving leader has the honor and the privilege of being credited for culture turnaround at the Cleveland Clinic.
Wow.
And so that has opened up lots of doors for us. My work had historically been in manufacturing and retail, but hospital world too. And as soon as I walked into the hospital, this Catholic hospital in South Florida, I knew the leader was doing good things. I saw it at the receptionist desk. I saw it. It doesn't. My eyeballs work. And when I got to the CEO's office, we sat down and I said to him, I said, I already know that you know what you're doing, because I see the quality, I see the consistency all the way up here. I said, that never happens accidentally, where you get that attentiveness and that friendliness and that warmth and that responsiveness. That's never an accident.
Yeah.
That flows. And I said, I already know that when you come in here in the morning and as you move around, you're clear about how you're navigating yourself to produce those effects. And I knew what was going to come next, because I've heard it hundreds of times. And he said, I do, but I don't know how to get anyone else to do it. Would you help me with that part? Uh, a lot of good leaders have it in here,
Right.
but systematically in, in organizational terms, how do I get it up and out of me and down and in to this business, down and into this organization, into our practices, our systems? And when the leader has it here, it's just work. It's not rocket science. That was your phrase. It's just work to move it out into replicable, scalable, repeatable, sustainable culture practices. It's great fun.
Especially when it's truly authentic. People know, like you said earlier on in this conversation,
Yeah,
people know when you just took the webinar or you just came back from an
it's
Amway
just
convention and you're all psyched for, 2 days.
people know. I was at an event once, and it was quite interactive with leaders from around the country, and somebody I knew pretty well, who struggles on the authenticity front. A good guy, came up to me afterward and he said, John, when you interact, as we've been doing everything, you seem so authentic. He said, how do you do that? And there's a sadness in that comment, to me, but
Right.
I've joked sometimes that authenticity is very hard to fake.
Yeah.
And let's the book I just finished writing, it's not published yet, is a sequel to the big book I wrote called The Serving Leader, and it's about how to grow up, what to do with life's face plants, life's sufferings, life's disappointments, setbacks, which we all have, so that we get improved by them. And what was that book about the Velveteen Rabbit? Authenticity is within the lifespan of every human being who's willing to be rubbed pretty hard by life.
No, it's brilliant. I know a lot of salespeople that say they're authentic, by the way, but they're authentically trying to sell you something. And I think people know the difference, especially from salespeople.
Every day,
There's
every day.
there's another great book, "The Search for Meaning," "Man's Search for Meaning" by
Viktor Frankl.
Frankl. Yeah,
Yeah, a favorite of mine. My brother, my big brother, is retired now, but no education, but one of the most brilliant salespeople I've ever watched. Somebody took a chance on him, and first year he outsold the other 5 salesmen in the heavy equipment division and never stopped. Sandler sales gurus studied him twice to ask the question, how can you actually do that? He ran numbers. I'm not talking about sales numbers; those were there. I'm talking about contact numbers. Yeah, he ran numbers of outreaches, cold calls that the industry says is not psychically sustainable. And Steve's very simple answer was, I'm not selling, I'm serving, I'm loving.
absolutely.
Now, he knew what he was selling, he understood his margins, he was smart, but his mind was, every contact I have as a human being, I can uplift them, I can care for them, I can love them, I can serve them. Therefore, he never drove away from a meeting defeated. He won all day long. I didn't say he got the sale.
Yeah.
He won all day long. His tank stayed full. He drove a lot more behavior. And of course, the numbers work in the favor of the salesperson who has more context. So another dimension of leaders who care, salespeople who care.
Absolutely. I mean,
It's a great strategy.
it's less exhausting. In fact, it's energizing. And you mentioned an interesting word, sustainable. What happens from that, I find, is that when everybody goes home eventually to have dinner with their family,
Right.
and the kids feel what's happened, and they
Yes.
see what's happened, and they
Yes.
see dad or mom comes home and says, "Oh man, work really sucked today. Give me a beer. I'm going to sit on the couch," or this, that, or my boss sucks, or nothing happened. Versus man, I met some great people today, and
Yeah,
company's doing great, and we're doing this community project. It's super cool, and
yeah,
they're seeing this and they're saying, "Wow, that is cool."
I love it. I love it. One of the things I pay attention to, um, I do a variety of things with leaders, coaching, training, working inside companies, but I also pull leaders together in cohorts in different parts of the country and in Singapore, and I watch for contact from family members, and invariably, at a certain point, I start hearing from spouses
Hmm.
that the spouse coming home at the end of the workday is becoming a better person.
Absolutely.
And because our leadership growth journey is really just, I think of it as an accelerated human growth journey.
Hmm.
What helps us lead better helps us live better.
Yeah, no doubt. There's a reason we call our practice the human element practice.
Yeah, right.
And because that, and again, it's not rocket science. Last question on this part. So how do you see business business leaders who care, if you will, their roles in ensuring the well-being of their talent? And well-being, I look at it as financial well-being, physical well-being, and mental well-being. How do you see their roles should be?
Well, first of all, it isn't the job of the chief to do everything.
Mhm.
Um, and so I would want to, just as a sidebar before I answer your question, say that I have seen a remarkable diversity of kinds of human beings be great leaders.
Absolutely.
Extroverted, introverted, strategic, gregarious, and on and on and on and on. What they do need to do is build the well-rounding team to make sure that whatever part they bring to the table is complemented. Now, that being said, the care of people, the watching out for the growth, for the trust building, for the opportunity to contribute of people is job number one of a leader. um, the chief has to be champion of that, even if the execution or the realization of that is executed through other team members.
Mhm.
And so the actual doing of it day by day can be dispersed, but there can be no mistake on the part of the people that the boss cares. Um, and what I spent a lot of time, you call them vintage, I call them legacy leaders. I spend a lot of time now also with older leaders who are looking out over the horizon line of the kind of the end zone of their primary executive leadership, and helping them detangle from all of the daily things, because it's part of getting the next generation ready. And very small gestures by a leader can powerfully sustain both the perception and the reality
Right.
across a whole company that my boss cares, especially if the company actually cares.
Well,
And so, yeah,
one of the best ways to show, to your point about having it does take a village of leaders, and the legacy is building other leaders as well.
it is.
We're talking to a lot of clients right now, but they need to have chief well-being officers in their company, and just the
Right?
appointment of a chief well-being officer is one step of caring.
And let me show you. So I'm always, I'm always advertising with my, this is a hand thrown mug with the Center for Serving Leadership, but on the backside, I give these to all my clients, and I have left-hand versions of them. The chief serving officer is to stare at the person drinking to remember that's who I am, and that's who I need to be. So, chief well-being officer, Mark, I like it very much. I endorse that heartily.
Awesome. So last question, because there could be so many more. We might have to, like in LA, you always talk about leaving them wanting more, because then you can do a sequel, right? So,
Right.
um, with all that's happened in 2020, now going 2021, seem to be heading to hopefully a better world. What are you most grateful for?
Oh, wow. I'm grateful for relationships. I am most grateful for relationships. The the joy of these last 15 years of just focusing on serving entrepreneurs and serving leaders is the enduring friendship. When I look through the course of my week and look at what happens from early morning to late at night, because I still work in Singapore virtually. I'm teaching or training or coaching sometimes till midnight. I spend all day with my friends, Mark. I'm grateful for relationships and the building of relationships, and then the discovery that years pass, and the trust, the love, the sense of connection abides. That is my greatest joy.
Ditto, as Demi Moore said on the
Very good, very good, awesome.
Hey,
Very nice of you to have me on your podcast, Mark.
no, it's an honor. I've been wanting to meet the author, and shout out to Jim for of the servant servant leadership, and so I'm thrilled, and we might have to have a sequel.
I'd be honored. Let me know.
Thanks so much. Take care.
You too.